Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Tracy, and if you don't know me, I have a passion for upcycling clothing and I teach sewing on here. I'm so excited to give you guys a tutorial on this very beginner-friendly drawstring tank. I created a digital sewing pattern. It's available on my Etsy shop. It's only 4 pieces, so it's super simple. Any stretch material that you find at the thrift store will be perfect for this project. When I was at the thrift store, I purchased these 2 skirts and I flipped them into these tanks and I absolutely love them. I wanted to show you what it would look like in another fabric. Be completely different. You can just have it completely sheer and not line the cups if you want. I decided to line my cups, but this one I didn't line them. I just kind of love how the skin peeks through. Life got kind of busy. I'm gonna do my best to try to be more consistent on YouTube and bring you guys more tutorials. If you guys have any suggestions, write them down below. So I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial, and please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This was the skirt I thrifted, so as you can see, it's such a beautiful lace and it's a stretch lace, so you want to make sure you start with a stretch fabric. It can either be lace or not lace. You can do a solid color as well, but I love lace and I am going to use the lining, so I'm just taking apart the skirt first with the top layer, and then I'm going to cut out the lining. So it's best to cut out the side seam so you can get the most of the fabric. But you can also just go buy some fabric, and you only need about 3/4 of a yard to a yard for this top. I also thrifted this vintage slip, and I'm just cutting off the bottom eyelet so I can actually use the rest of the slip as a slip, but this eyelet had a stain, so it was the perfect time to upcycle it. You guys can really just have fun with it and choose your textures and colors. It can really elevate your look. You can also make your entire top completely sheer. Go ahead and cut out your pattern pieces, so just follow the grain lines, and there's a few pieces that are cut on the fold. When you're using lace, just make sure the motif matches so everything's mirrored image. I'm using the existing hem on this skirt to have it on the hem of my top, so I've added a 1/2 inch seam allowance to the pattern, so if you want to hem it a different way you can totally do that, but I love using existing hems. It cuts the amount of time sewing. Lining is optional. I just chose to line my cups and the top of the back piece. To create the drawstring for this top, I'm just taking the existing hem on the lining and just cutting a 1/4 inch away from that hem stitch. Take a safety pin and just pin it to the seam allowance, and then just turn it into that opening and just do the push and pull method. If you need an in-depth tutorial on how to make spaghetti, I will link one, but you can also just use ribbon for this part. It doesn't need to be the fabric itself. I used ribbon on the white top. I made 2 of them, so I ended up with 2 drawstrings that are 14 inches long, and I just knotted the ends. If you have a lining, just take your main fabric and place it on top of your lining. So I have my cups lined for this top. I'm just placing it on top and just taking pins and pinning it all the way around. You want to repeat this to the back piece. Now you can just take it to the sewing machine and just sew a stay stitch all the way around, so you actually have these 2 pieces as 1 piece. You do a stay stitch, make sure it's a long stitch, so I'm doing a stitch size 5. This is going to get removed later once you actually sew the garment together. Now that the lining is attached, we can sew the shoulder seams together, so place right sides together. I take it to the sewing machine and I just overlock my shoulder seams. You can also just sew these on a regular sewing machine by using a small stitch size. So if you use a stitch size 2, it'll still allow your fabric to stretch a little bit. After sewing the shoulders together, you can see the overlock finish looks really nice on the inside. I know some machines have an overlock stitch, you can use that. Overlock the neckline and the center front of the cups. You don't have to overlock, I just like to because stretch fabrics don't fray, it's not necessary. Fold your neckline under a 1/4 inch and just start pinning all the way around. When I reach the center back, I just take my clothing label and just place it in the center back, and then I just fold over that 1/4 inch. After pinning the neckline, you can see that's the finished edge, so we can just take it to the sewing machine and just do a top stitch. I like to have the wrong side facing up just so I can see that seam allowance, so I stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the neckline. I'm just using a straight stitch, so it's fine on the neckline, just don't stretch it out or it's just going to end up being all like wobbly when you finish sewing it. Now that the neckline is nice and finished, you're going to take the center front of the cups and fold that under 1/2 inch. So just measure 1/2 inch and just pin it all the way down. This is going to create the channel for the drawstring at the front of the top. After pinning both cups into place, just take it to the sewing machine and stitch 3/8 of an inch away from the center front so you create that channel. And don't forget to back tack to secure this channel in place. Take the drawstring and a safety pin, just pin it on one end and just feed it through the channel on the cup. So just do the push and pull method. You see it peek out of the other end, just take the safety pin off and just pull the string back up a bit and you can just pin that in place. We're going to take this to the sewing machine and tack it down. Repeat to the other side and then you can just take it to the sewing machine and just do a tack at the very bottom. So on my sewing machine I'm doing a zigzag just to tack that in. I overlock the bottom of the cups and I'm also overlocking the underbust on pattern piece number 2. After overlocking, I just take the underbust and fold it under 1/4 inch and just pin it all the way. I take it and just place it on top of my cup, so I just match up the center front, pin it, and then I just start pinning that underbust right on top of that overlock, so just covering the overlock so it's only overlapping 1/4 inch. And just place pins and repeat to the other side. And sometimes you have to like stretch the cup to fit that underbust slightly, just because remember we had that little like stay stitch, so make sure that's not stopping you from stretching. After pinning the cups in place, just take it to your sewing machine and just do a top stitch. So you're going to top stitch all the way along that underbust. And it's already looking so adorable, so take the back piece and just attach pattern piece 4. So you're just going to attach that at that seam and just pin right sides together. Take it to your overlock machine and overlock. You can also just do a zigzag stitch on your regular sewing machine for this because the back piece needs to stretch. After sewing the back seam together, I went ahead and just overlocked my side seams separately, so we're not sewing them together yet. Now take some chalk and measure 4 inches from the hem and mark on all of your seams. This will indicate the start of your side slits. So after you mark 4 inches above the hem, you can just take right sides together of these side seams and just pin all the way until you hit that chalk line. On the white top, I chose to start the slit from the underbust seam, so that's what it looks like. And you're going to take it to the sewing machine and just sew 1/4 inch all the way until you hit the start of the slit. Don't forget to back tack when you hit that chalk line. After sewing the side seam, just take the slit and fold over that 1/4 inch so you can just open the rest of that seam allowance. So just pin it all the way and pin the other side as well. Now you can just take it to your sewing machine and do a top stitch. So it's like a rectangle, so you're going to start from the bottom. When you get to the top, you're just going to pivot your foot and then go across and then on your way back down and then stitch down. So I stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And just don't forget to back tack. So I went ahead and just overlocked my armholes. And now I'm just gonna fold a 1/4 inch under and just pin all the way around the armhole so I can do the hem finish on them. After pinning it in place, just take it to the sewing machine. I like to remove that piece so it's easier to stitch that armhole since it is a circle. Just do a top stitch 1/8 of an inch away, so this is just the same way I finished the neckline of this top. If you didn't have an existing hem, now would be the time to hem your top, and you also just fold it under a 1/4 inch and do a top stitch, and your top is finally done. I hope this tutorial was so easy to follow, and thank you so much for watching.